Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation, and welcome to another episode of the Spartan Nation podcast. Here with your host, Matt Lonsberry, and my co-host, Aiden Mulcrone. Aiden, a pretty somber show today, given what we saw last night at Spartan Stadium. Disappointing result, obviously, for the fan base, the players, the coaches, everybody involved. Can't feel anything but disappointment over the way last night went. And so, yeah, we're gonna dig right in and talk about it. Not sure what our audience will be like right now, just because of the nature of the loss. Plus, the Lions are playing right now. We understand that, so we'll try to keep it as brief as possible. But we need to dig into to find out what went wrong and talk about that and in the future of the program. So, yeah, and I mean, this one, it felt like it was over pretty quickly. Washington scores a couple easy touchdowns in the first quarter. Michigan State struggles to get anything going offensively, and it just it got out of hand really early. The game, we talked about this in the press box. Game felt like it took forever, and that was probably a combination of all the throws, clock stopping on incompletions, commercial breaks with all the scoring, at least all the scoring that Washington did. And then also when the game's over midway through the second quarter, obviously the rest of the game is going to drag too. And the Spartan fans who stuck around all night long in the stadium, they deserve a medal for their commitment and loyalty. If you watched the game on television and watched it and didn't turn it off, there's something wrong with you, because that was an ugly watch for sure. So Aiden, just general thoughts, I guess, on the game. I know it's I don't know. That's kind of the my brief little breakdown. Talk about what you saw.
Yeah, I think I talked with this with a few different people, that the pregame atmosphere was pretty good. I'd say, I know I had people texting me like, oh my God, they brought back Thunderstruck and everything. And it's, you could hear from the press box, like it was getting loud at the beginning.
Yep.
And, people were excited and everything. And then, MSU turns the ball over the first drive, like 3 and out. And then like Washington scores quick. And then, another 3 and out, another score, and then just kind of scores racked up. It was, they took the air out of the game early, and I think that's what Washington came in with the intention to do. And if you told me that MSU made Washington punt twice, got an interception and a turnover on downs, I would have said, that's what they wanted. Like that sounds like they competed.
Right.
But really, when you go back and watch the game itself, it was not a competition whatsoever. And I talked about this last night too in the post game, like after the post game, and I was like, Harlan Barnett went up there and talked, and then they had Mosley and Duplain go up after. And I was thinking, like, after all what these, the situation is not good for any of them, for anyone. But I think it would have been more fitting if the coordinators went up and answered some questions as well, because it didn't seem to me, or what kind of, watching Washington from previous games and even last year, it didn't seem like they were running anything new or anything that they haven't put out there already. And it was just they just kind of sliced through that defense, like, pretty easily. Again, offensively, like they just had a hard time getting going. And it was just a disappointment all around. Even special teams had some rough goes. I don't know really what more I can say besides that.
Yeah, and to your point too, like, and we mentioned this when Michigan State got that stop on Washington's second possession. The crowd had something to do with that. The crowd helped generate a false start, and there was a lot of excitement, and people were loud and supportive. And I agree completely. The pregame atmosphere was electric, and we talked about that coming into the game, that we thought that Spartan Stadium would be on fire, excited about Dantonio's return. He got a huge ovation and cheer when his face shows up on the video boards on the sideline. So the support was there, and like you said, it did get deflated quickly. I think one of the things, I had a lot of thoughts as I'm driving home last night after the game, and one of those was, I think we both kind of got maybe sucked in a little bit to the messages that had come out of the football camp this week, as far as being united. The players on Twitter were all very supportive of one another. Harlan Barnett at his pregame press conference during the week talked about just the team rallying together, and we did question, okay, can this galvanize the team? I think we got sucked into that a little bit, and when it went down onto the field, we found out pretty quickly that no, I think this week did have a pretty big impact on this team. We'll discuss how much, but maybe we had too high of expectations given the situation that went down last weekend. All of the distraction of that, and then throwing the fact that you've got a team that is clearly, I think at this point, one of the 10 best teams in the country, maybe higher than that even. And it was just a recipe for a disaster, and that's what we got. So yeah, that's kind of the lowdown of it. I guess to your point about the coordinators too.
Mm-hmm.
So, Scotty Hazelton has come over a lot of fire from the fan base with good reason. Jay Johnson. Last year he caught a lot of criticism too, and Mel Tucker retains both of those guys this offseason. Doubles down on those guys, and they orchestrate a discrepancy in total yardage of 713 to 261. Like, that's the discrepancy that these two guys orchestrated. To your point, not having to answer any questions. Starting with Scotty Hazelton, I understand Washington has arguably the best offense in the country. I think them and USC, you can pick one, and those are the two probably best, most explosive offenses in the country. So there's a limit to what you can do defensively to try to limit those guys. You didn't limit anything. Like, you gave up a school record in offensive yards. So whatever strategy you had did not work, period. Like, you could play off coverage and just try to keep everything in front of you. Nope, they got beat over the top. They also got beat on those little dump off throws for 7-8 yards, and then you turn up field and get a couple extra yards. Washington didn't even try to run the ball much early because they didn't have to. But then even in the second half, they start to run the ball, and you're getting gashed for run plays. And so, I mean, at this point, I don't know what else there is to say about Scotty Hazelton. It hasn't worked here. Obviously, you're not going to make a move in season because you can't at this point. You've already lost your head coach. So,
right.
Like, you're stuck with him for the rest of the year. But, I mean, there was always going to be mass changes going into 2024 because of the situation that had last weekend. But like, this game, if anything, it just confirmed the fact that a lot of people need to be shown the door, and you got to bring in a new staff and get the next rebuild started, because this hasn't worked, period.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I want to point out a few things. The first would be the second. So you said MSU as a total offensive yards for the whole game was 261. Washington in the second quarter, just the second quarter, had 268. And that should tell you all you need to know about that. And the other thing is Harlan Barnett mentioned this. is that MSU still has 3 teams on their schedule that are ranked ahead of Washington.
Yeah.
They have Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. And, regardless of, whether that will change, that's still to his point that there are 3 really good teams that, MSU is going to play 4 teams that are going to contend for the playoff. Like it is what it is. Like all 4 of those teams will be in the playoff conversation for pretty much the whole season, barring some major injuries or whatnot. But even then, there's 4 top 10 teams that they play. And, when you look ahead to 2024, 2025, it doesn't get any easier either. A lot, with the conference realignment, they're going to end up playing, not Mike Penix, but they'll be playing a Kalen DeBoer offense for, the near future. Unless he goes and takes a different job, which doesn't, he looks comfortable there right now. So,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, with Washington joining the Big Ten and the financial security that provides for Washington, like that's a big boy job now. And so, unless like one of the top 5 jobs in America comes open, it's hard to imagine him leaving and going somewhere else, because that is one of the best jobs in the country right now. So, I completely agree. A failure on every level. And once again, like, I guess this is one of my burning questions, so I guess I won't get into it now, and we'll shift the conversation pretty soon here to the burning questions. But the thing I did want to talk about before we get into that was Harlan Barnett and the post-game press conference. Frankly, I felt really sorry for him. Like, I had some sympathy for him just as a human being. This is a guy who played for the university, has a lot of pride in being a Spartan, has been this responsibility has kind of been thrust onto him. Being the head coach at Michigan State is something that he's dreamed about and looked forward to and tried to earn. Didn't want to get there this way. And just was about as rough of a debut as you could have. And so just, again, on a human level, felt for him last night. I think all 3 of the guys who spoke, Barnett, Trey Mosley, and JD Duplain, 2 guys who were in Indianapolis at Big Ten Media Days. So they've been the voice of the locker room before. I have to commend those guys for the way they conducted themselves in the post-game press conference. They answered questions. They didn't deflect. They took ownership for the stuff that they could take ownership for. I felt like they were honest about some of the questions about the Tucker situation. They didn't go into detail or anything like that, but I didn't expect them to. But they didn't deflect. Trey Mosley admitted that it was kind of a shock when that went down, but then the attention quickly focused to kind of coming together and trying to prepare for this game. So I just wanted to give a shout out to those 3 guys who did step up to the podium, and again I think they represented their university well in the midst of that situation. So in any final game thoughts before we move on to burning questions? I don't think there's a whole lot to linger on there, but
I think, like you were saying, I don't really think it's really fair to any of those 3 to go up there and kind of give their honest opinions, because it's kind of like, what do you want them to say? Because they really got thrown into just a bad situation all around. And especially Mosley and Duplain, if you count Harlan Barnett, this is those 2 have really played, they've played at MSU their whole career. They never transferred, and this is their 3rd head coach. So it's really got to be tough for guys like that. And I had conversations previously in the week about kind of where MSU is at in terms of assuming they're going to be looking for a new head coach soon.
Yeah.
In terms of resources and kind of where the program is at in terms of program success, they're kind of on the same level as Washington. In terms of kind of all things considered, obviously, situationally, amongst what's happened the past kind of few years amongst MSU, they've kind of had some bad situations, but everything else kind of they're on the same level in terms of like financial kind of fan support, things like that. So this is a team that is coming into the Big Ten that you should be competing with a lot, and it should not be whatever the final score was 41-7 or whatever. Yeah, whatever it finished. It should not be that large of a gap. I think just kind of moving forward, this is a measuring stick. Washington's a team that is kind of like a measuring stick team on top of the Michigans, the Penn States, the Ohio States, even USC and Oregon coming in as well. So yeah, that's kind of the level of competition that they're going to be going up against. And yeah, this was definitely not a good look. So yeah, moving forward, it's definitely going to be, you have to act fast, and yeah, finding the right guy for the job is going to be very difficult. So yeah.
Yeah, no, and again, we talked about this on our show Wednesday, but when there's a coaching change, the transfer portal opens, and yeah, we talked about this, but the roster could look very different next year than it does right now. The coaching staff obviously will look very different, and so it does seem like Michigan State's on its way to starting over again with the football program, which is disappointing given the fact that was supposed to be year 4 of the current regime, and typically when you get into, I mean, the timeline's been sped up recently by coaches having success earlier due to the transfer portal or various situations, and that's obviously not going to happen here. Yeah, that's our takeaway from what we saw last night. Not too many positive spins to turn around anything that we saw. So with that, I think we'll get into burning questions. So I guess I'll take the lead on this one, Aiden. And I'm going to be honest, like most of my 5 burning questions are pretty like hard hitting questions. And I didn't like, not to be Debbie Downer or anything like that, but like, that's kind of where we're at after what we saw last night. So question number 1, does the result that we saw and the way it played out and also the situation from last weekend, does this change your preseason record prediction for Michigan State? I think we both had them at 7 wins. So what does that do for your preseason projection?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think MSU was going to beat Washington. I thought it would be a little bit more competitive, but obviously kind of just the situation revolving around the program right now, I think that affects the record more than kind of this game specifically. I think, having that kind of what's going on with Mel Tucker and that just drama in general is, yeah, like that's definitely going to affect the record. So I would say yes, it's definitely going to make it lower, and changes my record from 7-4 to, yeah, it could be between 4 to 6 now. So
Yeah.
I still think they have good chances to beat teams like Rutgers. I still think they have a good chance to beat a team like Nebraska. I mean, there's still a couple. I would still say there's a couple wins somewhere, but yeah, finding those wins are gonna be hard, and I'll be surprised. Yeah, I'll be surprised if they win 7 games.
Yeah, no, I think I would too at this point. Again, based off of 3 weeks of what we've seen, and the first 2 weeks against overmatched opponents, they played pretty well. First half against Central was not great, but second half, and then obviously the Richmond game, but then last night kind of house of cards kind of collapsed. So yeah, to like put a little bit more of a practical like where I'm at as far as like looking at the schedule again. I think I had them beating Maryland this week in my preseason. I'm questioning that. We'll do that show that on Wednesday. Then obviously we'll put out our staff predictions too. But I'm pulling back on that a little bit at this point. At the same time, I haven't been impressed by what I've seen out of Minnesota so far this year, particularly their offense. Nebraska, as I kind of thought, they need some time for Matt Rule to get that going, and so I do think that's a winnable game at home. I think this week's an important one for bowl eligibility, for reintroducing some positive momentum. And trying to keep the team together, because this is kind of what we saw last year was, you lost to Washington over in Seattle, you come home, you get smacked pretty good by Minnesota, and then the wheels kind of come off. And so this is almost like deja vu with Maryland coming in. This all of a sudden becomes potentially a turning point for the season. So, but again, we'll get into that show on Wednesday. But yeah, I think I'm pulling back to that 5-7, 6-6 area for now. But the thing about college football is perceptions can change quickly, like they did this weekend. So yeah, that's where we're at. All right, Aiden, go ahead and hit me with your first burning question.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of one big burning question, is just what's going to happen. But I will say, I'll just say this: after this game and kind of the following weeks, I guess, how many players do you expect to, maybe silently, maybe they don't say it publicly, or maybe they do say it publicly? How many players do you think, like, ballpark number, are going to say they're transferring, like, within kind of the next week? That are kind of, they check out and it's kind of all done for them.
Within the next week, I'm not sure. Week 4 is important with that too, because guys who have not redshirted, they can play in 4 games before,
Right.
and then sit the rest of the season. Then you're still eligible for redshirt. So again, that's why I think this coming Saturday is so crucial, because if you bounce back and you find a way to beat Maryland, you're 3-1. Like, and most people expected you to lose to Washington. So I think this week is really important to answer that question. If you go out there and it looks anything remotely like we saw last week, then that's totally different. Like, all of a sudden, anybody who hasn't taken a red shirt, and obviously the players know the situation with the coaches, and it seems like, I hate to call this like a lost year, but with given the situation, given the fact that you're probably bringing in a new coaching staff, there's not much else to call it at this point, because even if you do surprise some people and have if they meet preseason expectations, they win 7 games, go to a bowl game, you're still, the transfer portal still opens up with Tucker's dismissal, and you still have those younger guys from the last couple of recruiting classes who came here largely because of Tucker and the staff's recruiting prowess. And all of a sudden, a lot of those guys aren't going to be around anymore. So yeah, it's tough to say at this point, and I don't want to speculate about individual players, because that's probably not fair to them. But yeah, I mean, at this point, Kerry Ellis says, 20 transfers. We've seen that before in the Tucker era. I think between 2021 and 2022, or maybe 20 and 2021, there was, that number of transfers. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that again this year.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel the same way. I don't see 20 transfers leaving, within the next week or
No,
two.
no.
But yeah, like it can be a domino effect. I mean, we saw that this offseason with, Keon Coleman and Peyton Thorne. And then when Keon Coleman entered the portal, we saw Charles Brantley enter the portal. Obviously, he came back, but still, it's a domino effect. And all these guys are teammates. They're friends. They spend, pretty much all day together, so there's a lot of talking. So if one guy, if one guy is like, hey, I'm out, it's going to lead to other guys, and there's a lot of influence there. So I think that yeah, I think there's definitely behind closed doors probably guys already thinking about it, if not kind of have their mind made up without saying anything. So but yeah, it's definitely going to be hard to tell. I think once one of them goes public, I don't think there will be any, public, yeah, any players entering the portal publicly until after the game, or after the Maryland game. But yeah, this is also not a reflection on Harlan Barnett. I don't think
No.
so. I think, Duplain talked about that. Everyone has respect for him. That's why he's the interim guy. I don't think, these players entering the portal is a reflection on him. I think it reflects just kind of the turmoil that's been going on just around the university, and around the program. And I think, again, yeah, it's not a reflection on him, but no kid wants to go through that. And you know I mean, no, not even kid, nobody in general wants to really go through that. So I think, yeah, for that reason, I think there's going to be some, and yeah, well, I think once the first domino falls, it's gonna be a steep hill down.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair to question Harlan Barnett's ability as like a head coach. I mean, that's fair game. But I completely agree with you as far as like the whole transfer thing. Like
Hmm.
if kids transfer out, it's not because they don't like Harlan Barnett
Hmm.
or trust him. It's just like that's just the nature of the beast in modern day college football. And
Right.
I want to throw up Kerry Ellis's comment about Bobby Williams and Jen L. Smith. Uh, the difference was they didn't have a transfer portal to deal with back then too. So like that's just another added dimension that is working against Michigan State at this point. So, um, and my advice to keys to wisdom: don't bet with your heart, don't gamble with your heart. And that's my advice for sports betting, and also my advice in your romantic life as well. Don't gamble with your heart. So, uh, yeah. So, just wanted to give a shout out to those two guys, who are very loyal listeners, and we appreciate that. All right, moving forward. um, Admittedly, I don't really like this question of mine, but I'm going to ask it anyway because, again, we're reacting to what we saw last night. So, my question is: should Caden Hauser get more of an opportunity at quarterback going forward?
Well, I'll just tell you right now, that's one of my burning questions.
Okay.
So that's we can just use that for number two. Is I said, should Caden Hauser get a chance to play? And I think it's too early still. I still think it's a little bit too early. Um, I mean, it's fair to say Kim was not good last night, because I mean he threw one interception. Um, but yeah, he struggled, and I mean, he's not the only one that struggled. So
Sure.
it's, yeah, but again, I think it's a little bit too early to kind of jump ship right now and give Hauser the keys. But at the same time, it does kind of make you question, just with everything going on. It's like, hey, if we give him, if we turn it over to Hauser, or even Sam Levitt,
Yeah.
it's like, is this gonna solidify our future? Is this gonna help us, next year, with turnover? Is this gonna, help reduce the turnover, or what's gonna happen? So I think it's too early, but I will say, this Maryland game will be very telling. And I think, you get to Maryland and Iowa, if it's not looking pretty, then I'd say, okay, maybe they should give Hauser a legit shot.
Yeah, no, I think it's such a complicated situation because you don't know of those three guys. Which I mean, I know there's a fourth quarterback in the room. Can't even pronounce his name. That's pretty bad. Guy who covers Michigan State. But those are the three guys, though, and you don't know who's going to be here going forward, which is just a tough situation because normally, like you could audition a little bit more and play this into the season, because at this point, again, not to call this a lost season, but after last week, it's they're in a dire situation, and then you throw the situation with Tucker on top of that. So yeah, I think this is such a, I don't even like using this phrase because it's what this regime has kind of preached to us every offseason, but everything is an open competition at this point. And you're playing for, you're competing to have that opportunity to continue to be out on the field, and it's almost like you're auditioning for other programs with the transfer portal. That's like, there's just like that umbrella is not going anywhere, because we don't know who wants to be here regardless of the coaching staff, who's thinking about how can all these guys have aspirations of getting to the NFL. And so a lot of them could be thinking, okay, where can I go that gives me a chance to do that still? So again, that's a lot of speculation at this point. I think you need to ride with Kim going into this week and see if he improves against Maryland. But I think the leash is a little bit shorter now after what we saw last night. So I guess that's where I'm at with that. So that was both of our second one. So I'll go on. I've actually got 6, and I'm going to skip my third one because it doesn't belong in this conversation. So we're good. I still have 5. We touched on this a little bit before, but I guess I'll bring it up again. After giving up a school record 713 yards of offense, how much of that do you feel was like just this tumultuous week that Michigan State went through, and how much of it was, Scotty Hazelton just not knowing what to do against an offense like Washington's?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like I said, they didn't show anything that was new or anything really special. It was a lot of deep, crossing routes and stuff, and MSU tried to keep it in front of them, and they couldn't. I think, obviously this is it was a big emotional game for them, and
Sure.
I do think as much as the coaches and players will say that it didn't play a factor, it absolutely did play. This last week absolutely did play a factor, and you can tell. And even if the game was, even if Tucker played or coached and none of this happened, like it still looked like they were gonna lose, like,
yeah,
pretty easily. But I do think it would have been, it wouldn't have been, roll over and die, second quarter. It probably would have been, maybe give up like late in the third or something like that. It would have been they would have, stretched it out a little bit longer. But, Washington only had one drive that was more than 5 minutes, which, is crazy. It was just like,
and they still won time of possession.
Yeah, and they had, they ran a bunch of 2-minute drills in the first half. So
yeah,
I mean, I think, Hazelton obviously has been under a lot of scrutiny just the last 3 years. Obviously they had like the worst passing defense in the country in 2021. They improved a little, but I still think they were like 100th last year. Like they were in like the 90s in terms of pass defense in the country. And then, the first 2 games started out really really well, and then you go up against a super high powered offense like Washington, and it just you're back at square one. So I think it is accredited to a little bit to kind of the learning curve and not really making a lot of adjustments, but yeah, at the same time, you know the stuff turmoil kind of surrounding the program, and yeah, I think just the high powered offense. I mean, all those receivers were
Oh man.
just they I mean, I think watching them in Ohio State the first 3-4 games of the season, it's safe to say that I feel confident saying they have a better wide receiver group than Ohio State. I mean, none of those guys may be as good as Marvin Harrison, but as a unit,
Yeah.
I think they are way better.
I agree. I think they do have a better group as a whole. And I mean, there were some catches that those guys made last night where Michigan State's guy, like Charles Brantley, there's a deep one. I think Washington was at the 4, and it's the first play of the drive, and Michael Penix just chucks it down past midfield. And Brantley was in pretty good position. Like he's on his hip. He kind of gave up inside leverage, but was not like beaten by 5 yards like we've seen at times, going back to last year. He's right there in his hip pocket. And I think it was Adunes was the wide receiver for Washington. And he goes up and makes a great play on the ball and hauls it in. We saw multiple really impressive catches by that wide receiver core. So that is some perspective to keep as far as like, this is a really good team.
I mean, part of it was schematics, and part of it was just execution, and some of it was just they got lucky. Like there was Jordan Hall tipped a pass, and then they went he picked it, he grabbed it and ran, like I was it a touchdown? I can't even remember. Yeah, it was a touchdown. He just found it, and it was just a little. I mean, I don't want to say it was lucky, because 41-7 is there's no luck in 41-7, but they did have a lot of plays that went their way. You don't win with luck going up that much. But I also want to point out that at halftime, we get the stat sheets at halftime, and I look down at the stat sheets, and Washington had 4 receivers like catch a pass. So the 4 receivers that had passes, 2 of them had 113 yards receiving. The third one had 96 yards receiving. And the fourth one had 37 yards receiving, but had 3 touchdowns, all in the first half.
Just crazy.
It's just kind of, it was definitely just a dominating performance. And yeah, I know someone in the comments said it looked like a varsity versus JV, and it really did feel like that for a while.
Yeah, and to your point on the play where Jordan Hall almost comes up with an interception, he does get his hands on the ball. The Washington guy catches it. There was a missed tackle there too, that as he's going into the end zone for a 30-yard touchdown. To your point about luck, they probably score on that drive no matter what, like even if that play doesn't happen. But it was kind of just like that's the way the night's going for Michigan State. So, So that was my number 3.
Yeah.
So okay, go ahead and hit me your next one.
Yeah. So mine kind of goes into just the situation in general is kind of bad, but I would just say, if my third question is, if you're Mark Dantonio and you're being brought in as kind of a reference or advisor for Harlan Barnett, what do you say just after this week, after the game? Like what I mean, not what do you say, but what can you say as well? Because it feels like there's not a lot you can say.
That's an excellent question. Obviously, those guys do have a long history of coaching together, and so I do think not that Michigan State fans needed another reason to love and appreciate Mark Dantonio and what he did for the program, but just his willingness to step up and take on at least a partial role in the goings on here in a time of need. I think that just is another thing that Michigan State fans can appreciate about him. The question that I kind of threw out, and we won't have to get into it, but it was like, are you afraid that his involvement hurts his legacy at all? That's a stupid question. That's why I threw it out, and we're both saying no. Like, if anything, I think again his willingness to step up. If anything, it just adds to his legacy because he's just showing his love for the university here. But no, I don't know. I don't know what those individual conversations are like. Obviously, you're trying to encourage as much as possible. I think I know Dantonio's coaching background is on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know if his history is the secondary, going back to when he was a position coach or not. It is. So, maybe there's something there just because, Harlan is the DB's coach, the secondary coach. So maybe there's something there. But yeah, it's a tough question to answer because I'm not privy to those conversations, but I guess my very broad and not great answer would be it's better to have him around as a sounding board than to not.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen MSU in situations like this. Obviously, there's been plenty of years where Ohio State, MSU has gone to play Ohio State and had, kind of this routing like this. And, Minnesota did this last year at MSU where they won 35-0, and it was not, particularly close from the beginning. And there were a lot of just, it was just a mess. So it's hard to say anything after this game besides, what Harlan Barnett said last night. He talked about, the team's goals are still in front of them. Obviously they haven't lost a Big Ten game yet. Obviously 2 years from now, this would be their first Big Ten loss of the season.
Yeah.
But they still have, their goals in front of them, which I think everyone's kind of in agreement that, they're not going to go make a run for the Big Ten. But at the same time, you got to prepare for Maryland because, Maryland is another team who offensively will, throw the ball a lot, and they have a good quarterback that you're familiar with, and, he's beaten you already. So I think it's just, you kind of got to really focus on the next game and make sure that, the guys who are playing are still bought in. And even if, they're thinking about entering the portal and stuff like that at the end of the year, you want them to, look out for their best interests, and that if they play hard and get better film, and you're still looking to enter the portal, if you get better film out there, then, you'll find some programs that'll take you that might be better suited than MSU at the moment.
Yeah. Just kind of as a side note here, it just occurred to me. I just wanted to give a shout out to Darius Snow, who did come back and play last night for the first time in over a year. Obviously a tough game to come back to, but Harlan Barnett brought him up, and I think he maybe was asked about Darius in the post-game press conference, and kudos to him for the work he's put into to get healthy. He still has a pretty good size brace on that right leg. But good to see him back out there in uniform and get a little playing time. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to him. I do believe the Maryland game is homecoming, JR Jr. So I think that's right, Aiden?
I'm not.
I thought you might know, but
I'm not an alum yet. So
okay. I think it is homecoming. I think that is correct.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong on that, I apologize, but I do believe next week is homecoming. All right. I think I've got a couple more, and you've got a couple more.
Yep.
So, again, this kind of pertains to Michigan State's running game, which once again did not perform very well. They had 53 yards rushing. They averaged 2 yards per attempt, and even if you take out the two sacks that Noah Kim was sacked twice, even if you take those out, I think their yards per carry was like 2.8. So not good. My question is, it seems like over the last couple of years, Chris Kapilovic has avoided most criticism. I think most people, even myself included, have thought of him as one of Mel Tucker's better assistant coaches. He has recruited pretty well, guys who are overlooked, but who have kind of based on what we've heard, have outperformed their recruiting rankings. So I guess my question is it time to start blaming Coach Cap a little bit for the lack of the run production?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say. I mean, if when you look at Michigan State's passing game, I think their pass protection is pretty solid. I think last year they only gave up, I think, 18 sacks. It wasn't terrible. I think even I think even this game, it wasn't. They didn't have the worst pass protection. I think Kim was, you know, he stood in there, and you're going to get pressure every game. That's inevitable unless you're, really, really good. But yeah, I thought that was fine. But the running game, it's hard to understand what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Usually you have an idea of what's going on, but I think it's just hard to understand because it does look like a lot of zone, and zone, it's up to the running back to find those gaps when you're running a zone scheme. But at the same time, it's up to the offensive line to create gaps when running a zone scheme. So it's hard to figure out. And just, yeah, just from like that standpoint, I think, yeah, there is some criticism that is justified.
I hate going back to this well repeatedly, but
Right.
I feel like Kenneth Walker's legacy just keeps getting better
Yeah.
and better.
Right.
The further away we get from like the 2021 season, and the more we see about Michigan State's running game, his status as an MSU legend just continues to grow. Just what he was able to do here, comparatively to what we've seen out of the running game with him not here. In fact, I think in the story I wrote last night, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I want to say there's 23 games of the Mel Tucker era that Kenneth Walker did not play in, and I think Michigan State is averaging a total of 104 rushing yards in those games, and that's including the games against the overmatched opponents, like we saw the first
Right.
2 this year. It's just been really bad in the run game, and because of that, I do have a little bit more sympathy towards, or empathy, I guess would be a better word, towards Noah Kim, even Peyton Thorne last year. And even if you do go to Caton Hauser or one of the younger guys, if you can't run the ball, a new fresh quarterback is going to struggle. Like if teams know they can stop your running game with just 6 in the box, and they can play coverage, you're in trouble. I don't care who's playing quarterback. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there because I think Kapilovic has avoided some criticism, and maybe it's time a little bit of heat goes his ways too. So, all right, Aiden, hit me with your next burning question.
All right, my next burning question is not I could save this. I could save this for the Wednesday pod, but I'll say it now. It's an over under.
Okay.
I'll go over under over under 50. I'll say I'm kind of debating this number, but I'll set it at 55,000. Over under 55,000 people show up to the Maryland game. It is
Oh,
homecoming, so I'll give it that.
okay. I'd be interesting to know what the number was this last weekend because it was
I
pretty
can look
loud
that
there.
up for you right now
Yeah,
as
go
we
ahead. I'll
speak.
talk and you look it up. But early on, like within like 10 minutes of kickoff, it seemed like there were a few more empty seats than I expected, but it did fill in pretty good. And again, we talked about the atmosphere pre-game and then early on in the game, and it was pretty good. I think the fan base showed up and were supportive, like we said. Off the top of my head, I think it will be more, even if it wasn't homecoming. Um, Again, Michigan State has a proud fan base, and again, as ugly as it was one loss. So yeah, I think it'll be well north of 50,000 this weekend.
Yeah, so yesterday the attendance was 75,500.
Okay.
Or sorry, 70,500.
All right. So
So
that
it
is
was
that's interesting though, because I think the season opener was 75, 76. So
yeah, I
um
think
and it
MSU
did
was
seem
around
it
76,
did seem
77.
yeah, it did
The
seem not
whole list.
quite as packed as it was
Mhm.
for the opener. So that kind of makes my point about there were a few more empty seats than I expected, but it was still a loud and hostile environment for
Yeah.
the first quarter. So
Yeah. Maybe I should have set the over under at 55,000 after the second quarter. Cuz
yeah, that might have been a
that might
better
be a different
question.
result.
That might
But
have been a better question.
but yeah, I think yeah, I didn't really factor in the homecoming aspect, but now that I think about it, yeah, I mean, I would take the over, but yeah, I think just the fact that people were leaving so early,
Oh
like
man, you
you could
pointed it
see,
out.
yeah, you could see, that student section was, yeah. I know Carrie Ellis just said 28 nothing. My row emptied out. That's the second quarter. So
Yeah.
yeah, that just shows kind of
We might have lost Aiden. He usually comes back, so we'll keep it going here.
where they're
And oh, he's still there. Aiden's internet's going out, but stick around because he usually comes back, and we've got a couple more questions to hash out here, and then we'll wrap it up for today. But yeah, no, I think the stadium is still going to be in pretty good shape. Um, the fans are going to show up next week, and with it being homecoming too, I do believe the fan base is still rallying around these players. The coaching staff is a different matter. I think most of the fan base is ready to see a new stock of coaches come in, and I can't blame them at this point. But as far as the players themselves, I think there's still a lot of support. And so, yeah, I expect Spartan Stadium to once again be pretty well filled out here in the coming. That's a good question, Carrie Ellis. Did Hazelton install Aiden's internet? It's possible. It's possible. This is the third week in a row that we've had some internet issues. 2 weeks ago it was me. Last week it was Aiden. He's back though. Aiden's back. Welcome back.
No, he did not install my internet, but
Okay. We're just about wrapped up here. I think you have one more and I've got one more.
yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor here to double up and into your next one because I'm going to save mine as kind of our last point.
All right. I kind of have a similar question to the running game of where are we, why aren't we seeing more quarterback kind of stuff? Why, everyone talked about kind of Kim's athleticism, which could help him win the job. And we haven't really seen him, run. We haven't seen him run the ball really at all. We've seen a couple scrambles, but there have not been any really design runs at this point. And kind of, again, like part of him winning the job was his athleticism, and we haven't really seen that. So kind of where does that fall in? And could that help with the running game? I mean, obviously that doesn't change what the line is doing, but does that help the running game that much more, or do you think regardless that it's not a factor?
Can you repeat that question one more time? Sorry, I was reading comments.
I get no, it's good. I was just gonna say, why haven't we seen
the quarterback
in the running game? And
right.
do you think if we saw him in the running game, it would help that much more, or it doesn't really affect the results?
I think obviously quarterback runs are a two-edged sword because you want to keep your guy healthy. But at the same time, with the way we saw the offense struggle to move the ball, even first half against Central, and then pretty much throughout the game last night, at this point, like you got to pull out all the stops. Like whatever helps you move the ball downfield, you've got to start doing. And if that's running Kim on, there was a great play. I mean, as much as you can criticize Jay Johnson, and we have, and he's deserved a lot of criticism, the one play design where I think they faked the reverse, and then Kim kind of fakes the QB sweep, and then Nathan Carter slipped out of the backfield, and he's in the flat, and he's wide open. Really good play design there, and Kim just missed him. And that goes for a first down, maybe even a touchdown if he makes the safety miss. So I do have to give Jay Johnson his flowers for that one play call. It was well designed, but like you've got to do some stuff that I know there's a limit to how many like those type of fakes you can do in a game because the defense starts looking for it and whatnot. And if you can't run the ball again, it really limits what you can do. But yeah, I think you got to pull out all the stops at this point, and whatever helps you move the ball down the field. And God forbid, because certainly we don't root for injuries here, and there were a couple more last night. But if Kim gets banged up a little bit, you go to Caton, and it was a quarterback competition in fall camp for a reason. So you do have other guys here. So yeah, I think you've got to do whatever it takes to move the ball down the field at this point.
Yeah, I think that, there was some poor execution. I know that there was I think we were talking about the same like kind of jump pass that he had Carter open on. They kind of ran like a counter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think there is a little bit of creativity. I think you can see it, but the execution was poor. And then once those creative plays are poorly executed, it feels like they go back to running those kind of vanilla plays or some bland stuff. So I mean, yeah, it's a big factor, but I think you talk about the quarterback kind of running the ball. I think you don't need a Jalen Hurts or a Jalen Milrow or kind of like a larger, bulkier quarterback who's kind of like a weightlifter to run the ball. I think Kim, we've seen other quarterbacks be able to do that. I think, yeah, like you're running out of options here. You might as well give him a go and trust him with his feet, or if you don't trust him with his feet, at least see how much you trust Hauser or Levitt with their feet. So I think that's really important. And again, kind of posing the question of whether or not it would help with the run game, and regardless of the offensive line, I don't think you have any other options. That again, you pulled out all the stops except that. You might as well try. It wouldn't hurt to try at this point, because right now it doesn't seem like you're playing for anything more than than just trying to make a bowl game.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
And Yeah, you could bring another guy if you really if Kim is your guy and he's your best thrower of the football, has the best understanding of the offense. Yeah, I think you make a good point. Maybe bring in one of the other guys and let them use their athleticism. Now you're probably tipping your hand a little bit when you do that, but both of those guys can throw the ball too. It's not like they have a noodle arm.
Right.
They both have really good arm talent. So it could be something that you set up for the future. You bring one of those guys in against Michigan or one of these other games, and it's a decoy, and he does sling it, and the defense doesn't expect it. So, yeah, I think that's an option. We'll see if it gets utilized at all, or if we're just speculating here. But all right, Aiden, I've got one more, and it saddens me to have to ask this question, but it occurred to me last night as I was driving home from the game. Is it already time to start talking about basketball season?
Oh man,
I know.
I mean,
it's depressing.
I love football and everything about it, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure the fan base is definitely posing that question in their head.
Yeah.
But I mean, no, I think you gotta. Personally, I'm gonna ride it out till the end. Fall is a special time.
I agree.
Football is just a special time, and you gotta soak it all in while it's here, because when you get to February, you're gonna be itching for football season. So no, I personally be checking into basketball season. I usually don't check into basketball season until about January when the national championship is done anyways. But yeah, well, I mean, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a two-sided thing because I'm totally with you on. I love college football. Like it's the sport that I'm most passionate about. It's the sport that I enjoy watching the most. Which is ironic because I was a basketball player. Like that was my playing sport was basketball. But there's something about just the pageantry of college football, and I'm going to enjoy the season as a whole, regardless of what happens in East Lansing. And obviously, like I don't have the emotional ties to Michigan State that certainly you do, being a student there, and then a lot of our audience too, either being alumni or fans throughout their lives. Like I don't have that emotional connection, but when you cover a team, you get to know some of the players. You interact with, at least in a press conference setting, you interact with coaches and things like that. So, but regardless, I'm gonna enjoy football season. But I do think the flip side of this question is Michigan State looks like they're going to have one heck of a basketball team this winter. So
Yeah,
I think that's part
true.
of the reason why. Certainly it's part of the reason why the fan base is probably maybe looking ahead. Okay, when's November start? I'm not doing that because you wait 8 months for football to come back, and so I'm certainly not wishing the season away. But again, certainly a lot of excitement about the basketball team this winter. Probably going to be. I would not put money because I don't gamble, but I would assume that Michigan State is going to have a top 5 preseason basketball team, top 10 at minimum. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I totally understand the excitement and looking ahead to basketball season. We're not ready to do it yet, but it did occur to me on the way home is like, yeah, there's probably a good portion of the fan base who's ready to see Tom Izzo and those boys back in the Breslin Center. So yeah. With that, I think we'll call it a day. I didn't know how long today's podcast would go, given just the lopsided nature of last night's game. But appreciate you guys sticking around. We had really good interaction, especially with the Lions going on at the same time. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll be back on Wednesday, God willing, to talk about the Maryland game. And obviously we'll have some press conference and things from Harlan, and maybe a couple of assistant coaches. Maybe we will get to hear from either Jay Johnson or Scotty Hazelton this week. And obviously we'll bring you all of that coverage on our Facebook page, Spartan Nation. Appreciate it if you guys give us a follow. Check out our content on there. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time.